Hi, I'm Olivia Coffey. I'm originally I lived in Corning, but I now live in Burdett. And I'm racing with the U.S. women's rowing team in Tokyo this summer. So the U.S. women's rowing team is an incredibly successful program. They've won the past, three Olympics in the women's eight, and that's the boat that I've been in. So I've been training to try to make this team for 10 years. And I was a spare in 2016. And so to finally made the team is like, it's very rewarding. I'm so excited to race. I'm so excited to represent my country and obviously our like southern tier, our area of upstate New York. So I'm just really looking forward to it. It's been like a huge privilege and um, yeah, I couldn't be more excited to race. I've been training for 2 years without a race, so I'm ready to go. I consider myself really fortunate that the Olympics was actually postponed because I got COVID early on in the pandemic in March. And so had the Olympics not have been postponed, I wouldn't have been able to compete. And so like, of course, when it happened, it was 16 months to the Olympics when they postponed last spring. And it was really hard to get my mind around it initially. What I ended up doing is I went home in March after they called the postponement. I trained at home through October. So I was in Watkins Glen. I was lifting with a local teacher. I was rowing on the inlet. I was basically training on my own. And then when I returned to the training center to train with the group of women that I compete with all year, like I kind of set these goals for myself. And like, if we're going to have an extra year of training, like I need to get the most out of it I can. And so I set, in the fall, this is my goal, the winter, the spring. And obviously the ultimate goal is to win an Olympic gold medal. And I've hit all my markers so far. So that's something that I hadn't done up until 2020. And so I really like the extra year to get faster. But, kind of stepping back, the pandemic was really hard for everybody. And everyone had to adjust and everybody was kind of working from home, Zooming, not getting that much contact with other people. But the thing that I really liked about training was I actually still got to see my teammates at the boathouse. So I was going and obviously we were like training separately. We were in singles for most of the fall, but like I could feel like the energy and I could feel that we were all very grateful to still be around each other and to still have the opportunity to race. Whereas it could have been easily canceled. And that was our Olympic dream. That was our shot for a lot of people. So I actually feel really fortunate that we've had this extra year of training and it's been my favorite so far. Why rowing? Okay, so my parents were both elite rowers. My dad was an Olympian as well. He has a silver medal from Montreal in the men's pair. And then he built boats in Addison for a long time. He had a shop out there. And so I've always been around it. But actually, my primary sports growing up were hockey and basketball. So I played basketball at Watkins Glen High School. We had a great team. And then throughout high school, actually, I thought I'd be like a hockey player in college. But I started, so I went away to boarding school in 2004 and then a rowing program there. And so I rowed in the spring. And that's kind of how I got my first introduction to it, but it wasn't my primary sport till I went away to college. Yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting to one up my dad finally because like really like I wouldn't have known he was an Olympian unless like, every now and then out of his sock drawer, he'd like pull out his medal. Like it's not something he really talked about too much. And so it wasn't ever like, oh, I have to live up to, the things my parents did. But sometimes like we'd be like competing and stuff. I'd be like, yeah, dad, like, look what I did. And be like, well, when you've won an Olympic silver medal, then you can talk to me. So I would love to like, finally be like, I got a gold. Obviously it's going to take a lot of work to get there, but no, it was just really nice. And it's like a sport that naturally I fit in very well. I'm very tall. I'm 6'1". I'm big. And that is something that's like an asset in rowing. So yeah, I'm lucky to have found the sport. I wish I had been better at ice hockey, but like, I just feel like my figure is better for rowing. It was really nice, like coming full circle. I grew up here and then I left when I was 14 and the pandemic was the most time I'd actually spent at home since leaving for school. And kind of coming back at the area has everything you need to be successful in sports and really everything you need to be successful in rowing. And I keep telling the national team, like, let's move the training center to upstate New York because it's like so beautiful. I mean, the inlet was perfect. Like I was able to kind of come back from COVID, step up the volume. I mean, I could row for 40 miles if I wanted to. The entire community was really helpful. I launched out of a local marina and they let me store my boat there. And so you just like, I've been away for so long that you come back and you just like, you finally appreciate the area that you're from. You're like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. The people are so nice. Like you can do anything you want to in this community. So it was really a nice place to kind of recover and recoup and like get my feet under me so I could kind of take the year by storm. I'm so proud. Like actually our boat has a ton of New Yorkers, and you'd be surprised. We have a girl who trained, a girl on my boat's from Canandaigua. I had another teammate who also trained from Burdett and Ithaca. And I think it speaks a lot to the region and like their ability to develop female athletes. Like I only shop at Wegmans, like I'm just upstate New York pride all the time. And you don't really, maybe because there are so many of us, but it clearly seems like the New York contingent is like the most proud. And my husband lives up there now. We bought a house. Like it's an area I want to be around forever. And and kind of the outpouring of support. Like I'm getting messages from teachers I had in elementary school, and kind of everybody remembers you. So it's small enough that you feel like you can connect with people, and yet it's large enough that you've got a diverse group of people kind of feeding into the community and bringing like all the different aspects into that. So I love the area. So like I hope that if I'm successful this summer, that everybody in the Southern Tier feels like they're a part of that success, because I really feel like I've been able to get this far because I had such a good foundation kind of coming out of that area. Obviously, it's super encouraging to see women kind of taking a bigger role in sports and media and getting more coverage and more publicity. There's clearly like a long way to go. But I honestly kind of felt like growing up playing basketball at Watkins Glen that we got so much support from the community that you couldn't really notice quite as big of a discrepancy. And so I felt really equal in like high school. And then of course, like when you kind of step back and you look at like the national media coverage, you realize how far behind women's athletics are. That's something I struggled with playing ice hockey. I was kind of always like, well, why can't I check, which is not allowed in women's hockey, but men are allowed to check. And that was something that it really always really bugged me. But what I enjoy about rowing is that it's exactly the same for men and women. It's 2,000 meters as fast as you can go, similar to just, running or I guess soccer, which I think is part of the reason why it's so popular. And I think just, people want to watch women's sports and they want to see women competing, but it's just not there. And so when that starts to shift, when there's more coverage, equal pay, like I think we're going to see the two sides start to equal out a little bit. So I'm excited for that. And I love the women's US soccer team, so I'm excited to see them compete too. I think I noticed a big difference in college strictly because the women were regulated by the NCAA and the men were not. And so like there were, things that we were restricted from doing as like an NCAA sport. So we couldn't travel internationally except every 4 years. We couldn't like trade shirts, which is a rowing tradition. And we couldn't have kind of out of season competitions where the men would kind of have like the Harvard Yale regatta. And that was kind of tough because you're in college and you're going, well, it's supposed to be equal, but we're not being treated equal, but we're governed by two different governing bodies. But kind of going up to the national team, I think that rowing's pretty far ahead in terms of like equality and supporting their athletes. And in the 2016 quad, the men and women trained together. So we had like equal facilities. Everything was on par. Now the men train in California, but I think that still, we get the same funding. Rowing's like not that big of a sport, so the step is not huge. But like the same award money, the same equipment, same access to coaching. And so that's like another reason why I find I can continue with rowing for so long and be pretty content with how it's going, is I feel like we're treated equally. But I think actually, as you mentioned, 2021 will be the first Olympics that men and women have equal opportunity in rowing. So what they've done is they've changed some of the events around so men and women can have equal numbers. And that's, it's really encouraging to see, because as an alternate in 2016, if they had had equal opportunity for women, I might have been able to go. And so, that's super encouraging. And you see, big regattas like the Oxford Cambridge race, they're racing on the Tideway, both men and women. That's something I participated in. The Henley Royal Regatta, they're adding more women's events. So I think we're kind of experiencing a big shift here, and it's fun to be a part of. So I'm trying to take part in every event that I can that furthers, the focus on women. So we leave for Tokyo on July 7th, and there are a bunch of restrictions this year. And unfortunately, I don't think we're allowed to leave the village. So I was looking forward to kind of touring around Tokyo and enjoying the culture, but I don't think that's going to be a part of my trip. But prior to going to Tokyo, we're training in Hawaii for a week, which is going to be like, it's going to be awesome. And then, you know, give even despite all the restrictions, no matter what, my favorite part of the Olympics is going to be racing and representing my country and trying to win a gold medal. And so that's what I'm most excited about. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours a day I train. And when you compare that to how many races I actually race, the ratio is kind of skewed. And so just the opportunity to race, it's my favorite part of the season. And yeah, like I'll do whatever it takes to cross that line first. Yeah, with rowing, it's like a long enough race that if it's not going well, you can kind of readjust in between. So, you know, whereas a sprinter might need to be in the zone right away, like it's not quite the case for rowers, but you know, in the week leading up, I have to sleep a lot. I have to eat a ton. I have to have coffee the race day on. Let's see, I have to have, you know, maybe some Sour Patch Kids before I get on the water. You know, I have like a warm-up routine on land, and I've been doing the same warm-up routine for like almost, you know, 7 or 8 years now. And so that like helps calm my mind a little bit. But I think that I'm going to be so on edge, just anything to kind of shut out the crowd, shut out, you know, distractions, and just focus. And that's what I'm going to be trying to doing. I guess the message to the community is just thank you for the support. Thank you for helping me become the athlete that I am. And, you know, watch me in Tokyo and look for me. I'll be most likely, you know, I might be in the back of the boat, so you'll see me. And just know, like, if I do well there, that's, you know, the community gets a piece of that too. And I hope that they enjoy it as much as I do.